you're gonna take care of that, huh, Gio?
Yes, yes. I started the recording. We're all
Okay.
set to go. And
Okay, yeah, we're recording. Great. So, welcome to this. Well, we're going to be looking at Module 3, which is about right livelihoods, and then towards the end we'll take a bit of time to look forward to Module 4 on local economies. So, I think I'll start. What to do? Let's just do a quick check-in. I like to hear people. I like to kind of, rather than just me talking. Why don't we just say a brief, just say hello, say your name, and a brief kind of how are you, or and also it'd be great just to gather a little bit of what you want to cover. If there's anything burning, any burning issues, anything you'd really like to talk about tonight. Because again, this is your session. It's up to you where we go and how we do it. So who would like to start? And when you're done, pass on to somebody else.
I will start to get the ball rolling.
Great.
And oh, I'm sorry. Ade, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, but no problem, Joe. You go ahead.
I'll pass it to you. Well, anyway, I'm Giovanni. I won't be very long, but I'm here to give you any support you need with the course in terms of academics or understanding processes and where you are at with the course, things like that. I'm talking to you from Connecticut, USA, and the weather is wonderful, and I'm very excited because I've been finally able to get into my garden and haul manure around and do all those wonderful things that I love to do. So voila, I'll pass it to Ade.
Thank you. Can you guys hear me? Cool.
Yep.
I'm Ade from France. I'm really excited to finally be here because the timing was not right for the last 2 sessions for me, and usually I really look forward to those live sessions. Like in the previous dimensions I took, it was a very nice time for me, so I'm very excited for this one. I really enjoyed this module, especially like I was saying in my reflection. I was really it was a good way to me to see how much I've moved in the last few years. Like I really realized that if I've read the material like 4 years ago, everything would have looked really crazy for me and like impossible to reach and just like a bit naive really. And now that I've taken on board a few things, everything makes sense. So that's it for now.
Pass it to someone?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, Andre?
Okay, yeah, I'm in Geneva, Switzerland at the moment, but we're making the big move back to our home country, South Africa, in October. So that's very much on my mind because international moving is not easy. And this time we've got a oldish dog that has to go along as well. So, you know, it's kind of complicated. South Africa's not in good shape at the moment. They're having an election in a few weeks. We've had lots of problems, and of course the weather there is also not very good. Electricity has been a problem there, so the basics is the issue there. But I'm excited too because there is a lot I can contribute. This course I finished. This will be the last module, and I just going to join the studio, and after this it's action, and so I'm officially retiring and then restarting a consulting business in South Africa, and possibly we're looking at Mauritius to get some of these issues on the ground in the third world countries. So I'm anxious. I'm anxious and a bit stressed out, but you know, that's life. Okay, I'll pass it on to Jamie. Is it Jamie, correct?
Oh yeah, Jaime in Portuguese. I'm in Rio. I'm seated in Rio. It's my first live session too. Unfortunately, I lost the 2 other ones. My first module with Gaia Education, and I'm currently on the middle of a change, of a personal change. I retired one year ago, and I'm planning to move outside the city. I've been living in Rio for all my life. Planning to live on a community, working on that, and change everything in terms of what I've been working through all of my life, you know. So it has been great to be in contact with all the material that Gaia is providing, and that is great to see other experiences throughout the world at this time. Yeah, I could have opted for doing the economic module in Portuguese, and I believe it will be with other guys in Brazil and so on. But I think the economic dimension is it's a very broad and global, you know, dimension for us to see and face all the challenges and so on. So maybe the social model and the social dimension, it would be very rich for me to join people in Brazil, because I will be together with people that are ahead of myself doing, you know, any projects and so on. So I'm here, and that's great to be here with you. Naresh, you are just at my side.
Thank
At
you,
least at
Jamie.
the screen.
Yeah, yeah, but a world away. Thank you, Jamie. I'm enjoying hopefully the beginning of a bank holiday weekend over Easter. Although I'm in the process of submitting an academic paper, so I don't know. I might have to do some work on that later tonight and tomorrow. And as I mentioned to some folks, I've been today's a day I've been interviewed by the BBC about climate change, and particularly about what we call deep adaptation, which is the notion that we're in a climate emergency and we are facing enormous changes to our way of life. So, and you know, obviously that impacts the economic sphere very much as well. There's nothing particular I want to focus on tonight. I'm willing to be guided and led by others on the call. So I'll pass on to Tim.
Hello, everyone. Tim, and I am in the middle of the woods in remote Upper Michigan, surrounded by lots and lots and lots of wilderness, which makes me very happy. And I'm getting a lot of writing done. And I enjoyed this module, and I really look forward to hearing other people's opinion on it. I'm in the process of kind of pivoting or evolving my 22-year-old business to do more of this kind of work. So it's really great to hear other people's thoughts and ideas around these concepts from all over the world. And I will pass on to Victoria. Can you hear me, Victoria?
I'm unmuted, yeah, sorry. So I'm Victoria, originally from Hungary, living in the UK for a decade. And I was interested in the kind of sustainability issues. And I don't know, I just came across that Eco-Village design course, so I thought it will fit into my interests. I was afraid of that economic design, but I actually quite enjoyed it so far. So we see what comes out of at the end. And maybe we will work with Adi and some of the other people on some relevant project on Eco-Village, kind of helping setting up Eco-Villages. Or what is your project there? I can't remember. That's something similar, isn't it? It is more of just a community helping with water, isn't it? Ade. Ooh. She's probably frozen. Yeah, she has a project as well, something to do in South Africa.
Yeah.
And yeah, probably we can work on something together as well.
Okay.
That's
Okay. We have Iona on the call, but she says she's in a public place, and she can't speak. But she said she's from London and currently visiting Chicago. Great. So let me do. So thank you for that. So there's a few things I think we'll pick up on. In the forums, I posed a question about right livelihood, which is what this module is about. And the question was particularly, well, how are you going to put what you're learning either on this module or some of the other Gaia education models and whatever other knowledge you have, how are you going to put that into practice in your own life? How are you going to create more resilience? How are you going to create a lifestyle that, say, is more in line with your ethics or your values? And we had some interesting discussions on the forum about that. And also there was some also really interesting stuff about the about an eco-village, about setting up an eco-village, which and the use of some of the things that are mentioned in the materials, like Kickstarter and how to crowdfund for projects and things like that. Because obviously, when you're setting up something like that, one of the key questions is, well, how are you going to raise the finance and how are you going to pay for it? So I'm going to go now and do a quick, well, as I've started, I'm just going to carry on and do a recap of Module 3. So the module starts out with GDP, the problems with GDP, and noticing that GDP measures quite a lot about economic activity, but it doesn't measure well-being or happiness, and it also measures a lot of the negatives about growth and the negative things that we create as a society. So if we have unsafe cars and there's a lot of car crashes, then obviously people then have to buy new cars and people are injured, so they have to go to hospital, and all that's measured in GDP. It's not necessarily a good thing. It doesn't lead to human well-being, but it increases economic activity. No matter, whatever you do, it just increases economic activity. So, and just increasing economic activity is not a very good measure of what we want to do with our economies and our societies. So people have come up with some alternative measures based at mostly a national and sometimes an international level. So something interesting happening is Bhutan. In Bhutan, there's this gross national happiness, which is an interesting marrying of the Buddhist ethics of the country, because it's I think a predominantly Buddhist country, alongside a kind of Buddhist economic outlook, and they're taking something they call gross national happiness as their goal, and then every government policy and how they're aligning their economic sphere alongside that sort of ethical consideration is I think of one of the most interesting international projects in altering the economic sphere. Then there's other ones. The Genuine Progress Indicator is another way of measuring progress. The Human Development Index is also another one. The Happy Planet Index, developed by New Economics Foundation, is also there, kind of looking at ecological efficiency with human well-being, sort of combining those two. And then the module moves on to some of the alternative level indicators that say participatory budgeting. That's one of the processes that's mentioned alongside, say, the Boston Indicator Project, which is what really matters to communities and sets up measurements for that. And then it goes into ethical consumption. So how we use our purchasing power as individuals, or even as companies, to get some of the goods out of the system rather than the bad. So there's this quote by Aldo Leopold, which I think is quite an interesting one, that a thing is right when it tends to preserve the integrity, stability, and beauty of the biotic community, so of life. And it's wrong when it does otherwise. So it's a really, I think that's kind of interesting, because reframing of ethics and ethical values, because that's something that's been notably missing. And then the module then goes on to look at some of the ways in which individuals and communities have approached an alternative way of sharing, an alternative way of consuming, an alternative way of doing business. So there's the whole degrowth movement. There's living a simplified life, downshifting, collaborative consumption, and then the module lists many different platforms to help realize those values, like Daily Good, Karma Tube, and so on. So that is that's a recap. So where do we want to go from there tonight? Any takers? Any questions? Anything anybody'd like to explore? Jamie, go ahead.
Okay. No, I have shared in the forum already this, because all this discussion, at the end of the day, this third module really impacted more myself in terms of my personal challenges, you see. In this module, I had to face what are the changes that I'm really seeking to do, you know, on my personal life. I have to visit things like where I am investing my money at this point in time. How I can, living in Brazil, in South America, can find out ethical banks, for instance, to have a way to have more purpose in terms of what I'm doing with my money and so on. So the kind of questions that arise reading the documentation and so on was very, let's say, with great impact. It disturbs a lot, you see. On the other side, as I mentioned in the forum too, living in Brazil, living in Rio, it's just like the experience of people that is going to Africa to face, you know, poverty, inequality, very bad social situations out there. So we live on our day-by-day basis that kind of situation with, if you live in Rio, you see all the time on our suburbs and so on, very bad social situations very nearby what they're doing. So it's a kind of a very difficult situation personally too, because you are thinking about the world and how you change the world and how humanity can change in terms of what we face as a challenge that we are discussing here. But you are on your neighborhood, there is so much to be done, you see. This is the kind of this kind of thought came to my mind so much reading this module and so on. But I believe, Naresh and the team, that one thing that came to me very strongly is, on a personal basis, whatever you do, food consumption, clothes consumption, if you start to talk about, I would like to invest my money on an ethical bank, and someone will ask you, well, so what the hell, what is an ethical bank? So what you are talking about? This kind of change will impact at the end of the day. And I believe so much in that, and I'm doing that on a personal basis. I believe for now that's okay in terms of the amount of things that I felt with the overall discussions we have through the documentation.
Mm. Can I ask you a question about your move? So you're moving out of Rio. You're moving to some kind of eco-village?
Eurozone, yeah, outside of the big city. We are planning to build an eco-village at this point in time. I have a group of people that have been working on that project for 2 years right now. My sister is one of the persons involved on that. And they are on the process of inviting people to participate on this project. We are just on that. But I will move outside. I would love to live on a community, on an eco-village and so on.
But even, I mean, in the meantime, are you planning on living in a more rural place so that you can have some land and grow food? Or
I already have a house rented outside Rio on the mountains. It's something like 100 kilometers from Rio, 2 hours. It's a nice place. It's a place where we have a lot of organic food farming, you know. So it's a very nice place to be. Not a place for an eco-village at this point in time, or a community. Could be a place, just move on a personal way. But I would like to pursue the community pathway, you see, an eco-village and so on.
It would, I mean, if you're happy to, it would be kind of interesting, I think, for me and perhaps others, to share a bit about what is it you're looking for. Are you wanting closer community with others? Are you wanting to live a lifestyle where you're more self-reliant, you're more self-sufficient, you're more resilient? Or is it you're seeking to create some kind of new business opportunity, setting up a business, or is it all of those things? I don't know. Anything?
Well, all of these things in a certain way. And I will begin with the settle up a business that you mentioned. I would love to be on an eco-village, on a community that has some kind of human development center, an institute, together with that can embrace the education, working with the community, neighborhood, and so on. So this is my view of business, you see, on this side. I do not seek to do, let's say, consulting in permaculture. I did a course of permaculture in last January, you see, but I do not seek to work with that. I would like more to work really with education and so on this side.
Jaime, sorry to interrupt you. I wanted to point out though that your idea sounds like a perfect design project for the design studio. Once you finish the 4 dimensions of the course, you can bring all that information to just develop that idea, you know, from the vision to the practicality. How do you do it? And you can have a little team of people working with you in the design studio to do that. I hope you bring it. Yeah.
Okay. I agree with that. I've been thinking about that. Or even join with other people that have some kind of project very similar. Yeah.
That's the idea, that we gain the skills to be able to design with others that idea that we can do a better place, a more sustainable project, contribution to the world, regeneration of cultures and things like that, you know? Yeah.
And Gio and Naresh, as I mentioned, I'm very new on this. It's my first module in Gaia and so on. I have just made the permaculture on last January. So I believe on this path, things will happen, you see, ideas will come. I will get relationships with people that are doing things at this point in time, and it's ahead of myself, and I will join.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, I can join.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lot to say. As I hear you, Jamie, I'm thinking about, what, and the reason I asked the question is what is your primary, where are you aiming at? Where are you wanting to go? And is it, is it like I said, here there's a sort of something about self-development, human development, education, as well as living with others. I would, you're in the right place to do that, because obviously this is an Ecovillage design outfit, and if there's anywhere you can get information and good ideas, it's here. So I'd strongly advise you to explore and visit. It's great to read online, but it's when you go and visit eco-villages. I've been to a number of eco-villages around the world, and when you go and visit an eco-village, you just get something, I don't know, you get something that you don't get by reading about it online or visiting their website or whatever. There's just some quality that and it really helps you to make your ideas much more concrete. Great. So I see Iona has said in the chat window that she'd love to know more about what you're doing and to get involved and to help in any way, Jamie. So there's another offer of help from Iona, and please, by all means, if you've got ideas, even if they're just starting to come to you, share them on the forum, and I'm sure people will respond. Adelaide, were you wanting to say something? No. Okay.
No. Sorry, I was just resting my head actually.
Okay.
I've been really enjoying listening to Jamie about all of this. Like, I thought it was a really interesting question you asked Naris about why is it that we want to do this? Because it seems so obvious that we don't have to formulate it, but actually when we get the question, we're like, what is it exactly? It's so many things at once. It's like this exercise on finding values we did in the social dimension, having like the importance of having values. Like I would say that everyone recognizes that having values is a good thing, but if we're to ask people, oh, what are your values? I don't know if a lot of people will be able to, just on the spot, be able to tell, oh, maybe that actually, I don't know. They would just take a lot of time to think about it. At least it was really true for me. And doing these exercises of asking ourselves, why am I doing that? What are my values? What are my ethics? All of that is really eye-opening. It's like a guide then that you can always come back to when you have questions in your life or about what you want to do, or why is it matching my values? Or if something doesn't feel right, or is it because one of my values is not matching that? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I really resonate with what you're saying. It's one of the, I'd say, probably the biggest drivers of change that we have, at least voluntary change, is the mismatch between the life we are living at the moment and our values, or our self-image, or what we think our values are. And it's only by living those values that you really clarify what those values are and get a deeper awareness of what it is you value most and why, and how you go about living those values. And we can do that in every sphere of our lives. We can do that both at a very personal level, at a spiritual or meditation kind of level. We can do that in reflect that in the relationships that we're in, our close families and friends, and we can do it with the people around us in our communities. And I think it's important to look at those different levels of scale and see where am I what are my values? Where am I living my values? Where am I not living my values? And particularly in the economic sphere, because I think that's often the toughest. And particularly, like Jamie, you mentioned about money and about investing, and you know, how do we either invest our money or how do we spend our money in a way that reflects our values, which is, again, that was part of what this module is about. And then the other question is, well, how do we live? What work do we do that?
Sorry, everyone, the connection is really bad, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So yeah, how do we? So if either of you who aren't visible, if you want to ask a question, just put a Q or an H or something in the chat window, so I'll see it and I can go to you. Yeah. So how do we live those values? I heard a few other people talk about. Andre, you want to talk about business and about how you want to set up a business that reflects your values, or is it something else you want to talk about? It's fine.
No, that's fine. I have seen a lot of people struggle with this issue, you know, and I think I was lucky because I grew up rural, and so I grew up amongst different cultures. And as kids, you know, cultures mix, and I learned a lot of that, and that was my driving force for my whole life, because we had nothing to live on virtually, but you did what you could. But the value set was set because in these communities, and when you do not have a lot of material things, and you have nature around you, my value set has been set at a very young age. And it simply is a value set that says that I work ethically, I will never do something unethically, and whatever the consequences. And it also comes down to religious matters. And that's how I live my life. I've never chased money. We've never worked that way. I have missed promotions. I've missed so I faced disciplinaries because I simply did not want to compromise my ethics. And that's just how I lived it. You know, my whole life I've lived like that, and I take the consequences of living like that. So that's the first point. The second point, luckily I had a father that was a policeman, so that helped. He was very strict, but he also went to do investments. So from the investment and the money point of view, it's an unfortunate fact that you do have to have means of living. I'm facing 30 years of possibly no income, retiring. My father was very good at this sort of thing. And when you start young, you have a chance to build yourself up to a financial situation without consuming much, without spending a lot of money. We didn't. We built gardens, for example, instead of spending money on other things, kind of thing. And get to a point of security where you can comfortably say, now I can do what I want to do. Because I broke away and formed my own business for the last 25 years. But it took some time to get there. It took some time to learn how to build up some resources. And I also had to make sure that we had enough money and invested so that when we retire, we can put that to a side where we can do what we want to do. And helping people it's always been my sort of scenario, particularly online communities. I'm focusing on that. Some of you might have read that I'm focusing on building a Gaia education community, because what I found in the other modules is that we lose contact. And there's some wonderful projects going on. And I would want to create this private space for Gaia education people to put their information on there, ask for help. Maybe I can add a whole community a page or pages or system to it, which can be private, but within the confines of a secure system. So Geo, that is probably the kind of community I would like to focus on, because I use a platform that I know very well. I use for customers, so I can do one very quickly. So far, 13 people of this course have volunteered to be the first people to join on a test basis. And, there's discussion. It's a Facebook, it's an Instagram, it's all of that, but only for Gaia people. And it's completely protected. They call it virtual private networks. So that is my first objective. My second objective is to then settle in Cape Town area, connect with the local environmentalists there, and then look at the community situation there, and then see how I can assist in terms of particularly education. And I would like to educate people in companies to join this course. I would like to drag them to this course, because in companies and in governments, there are people who are trying to do what these people are doing. And I would like to target those people specifically, because I would like to see the change happening within these huge structures. And a lot of these youngsters are going to go up the ladder, and once they have the power, they're going to change things. I've seen a few of those happening, and I would like to put my weight behind that. So I'll be writing training courses. I'll be targeting companies as a consultant. Being in Geneva, I have studied a normal and a very interesting financial system here, of course, the Swiss, and as well as the whole peaceful way of living and coexisting here has given me a tremendous insight into the basics of forming a peaceful community. And what is essential here in Switzerland is that the big companies basically have taken the responsibility for Switzerland and the people. So government almost answers to the big companies, but a lot of these companies are changing to sustainability. They are changing to green areas. I posted some articles about how the oil industry is heavily investing. Pharmaceutical companies are probably underestimated. They do a lot of good work behind the scenes. They're not people that actually use their community responsibilities that they do as marketing. That's a sort of unethical practice. So they have a lot of money, and I've seen that in action, and it works very well. So education, yes, that is the other one, but I would like to see light points. I like to see people like yourselves that has got the experience and the motivation and the knowledge and in the worldview, you open your minds even more. I'd like people like that to be in key situations to start making the changes, because the models are there. The world, the IMF is at the moment ready for that kind of economic change. I reckon we are at a tipping point this year and next year, but we can make those policy changes if the right policy changes are made. So that's sort of what got me excited in this module. So, sorry about the length of it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Andre. That's pretty comprehensive. I mean, you've reiterated something that you've said a number of times about getting business on board. And also, I think it's important to recognize that there are a lot of companies now who are taking the sustainability agenda on board and making pretty big changes, pretty big. However, the thing that I return to again and again is the overall paradigm. And I said this morning on BBC Radio. Our overall paradigm of growth-based economics that we explored in the last module about money and about why fractional reserve banking and money is debt and hold on, how that creates this exponential growth within our economic system. There's nobody. And nobody's whose responsibility is to tackle that. Each individual company can do their thing, but in terms of tackling the overall system or finding a way to change that overall system, it's a bit of it's a big problem. And I don't see any pathway by which we are going to change that fundamental. And unless we change that fundamental, we're not going to, we are going to remain on the road to climate and ecological breakdown. Yeah, go ahead, Andre.
Just quickly on that point, when I worked for the company Novartis, which is a worldwide pharmaceutical company, it was interesting to see how the different pharmaceutical companies in each country actually get together. The pharma industry as such, they get together. The agricultural industry, they get together. So there are a possibility, and it's happening, where they do influence each other. Like they look at price structures, they look at social responsibility, and they try to dovetail in a country together. And of course, this goes international as well. So there is definitely opportunity if you target the top guys, which is where I really work. And now in Geneva, I have also got a lot of people, and I know also where to find some support. You get angel investors here. These are people that want to make changes without making money, and they're prepared to back that. But yes, you can. I'm confident that in the company structure where things move fairly quickly and it's very efficient, not government structures, but that is definitely obtainable. You start a chain reaction in one company. The CEO gets very excited about the whole thing. You find that they talk to each other, and the other guys get excited, and before you know it, all the companies have started something, amongst themselves.
So I guess my question now is, would there be, even if you had a CEO who got that, it would be a very, very brave executive indeed who would put the proposition to their company and their shareholders and their board to say, okay, so next year we're going to aim to produce 10% less than we produce this year. And then the next year we're going to produce 10% less again. I don't think they would stay in their job for very long.
No, these guys are good. They're tough. They forsake families. You get to a state where if you want to enter into that world, they bring you here to Switzerland, and they basically tell you that you will have to decide company or family. It's a tough job, and these guys get moved around all across the world at the drop of a hat. They choose their guys very carefully, and these guys are fearless. They're extremely bright people, and they generally have the company and everybody at heart. It's amazing what these guys can do. And so I'm in the pharmaceutical industry. I'm not worried about that because I know that industry well, and I've met a lot of these CEOs, and they just superhuman, these guys.
So how do we put all that expertise to creating a business model that is at best steady state and probably at very best is slowly decreasing the size of the economy? How do we put that expertise, how do we put that drive, that ambition, that in extraordinary mental and emotional capacities that those people have to solving this enormous problem that is,
Okay.
People talk about the elephant in the room. Well, it's the elephant in the room.
A lot of this has been done before. Let me give you a quick example. SIBO, which was the company before, when they joined and made the big company, they had a pesticide manufacturing plant right in the middle of farmland. They wanted to water it and everything, but they decided that it was too dangerous to have this pesticide factory, as good as it was, in the heart of a big farming area. So they closed it down. Obviously, we've got very strong unions as well in South Africa, but the way they closed it down is that they went to other suppliers, their clients, and they said they will set the staff up as a company to do transporting, this, that, cleaning, whatever. So they just transferred the company into another type of company. And they started importing very concentrated pesticides, which can then be diluted, and a lot of those have started becoming environmentally friendly. I mean, the technology in the chemical industry has changed dramatically because of pesticide resistance, and genetic engineering comes into it a lot. I know that is a controversial area, but it's unavoidable. But yes, we have actually done these kind of things. It's the same with education. We got all the pharmaceutical companies together to educate all the people who had not had opportunity of schooling. And suddenly we found the most brilliant guys sitting in the factory loading trucks that should never have done that. You know, they had this natural ability, so we developed that. And this was a joint operation of all the pharmaceutical companies, because they had to give time off, etc., and money. So yes, it's very, very achievable, but you need somebody to go and take a pin, literally, and jab them with it, and that's me.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, Adelaide?
Yes, thank you. I just have a question for Andre about these big companies. I just wonder, like, I've done quite a lot of research around all of this, and even if, like, unlike you, I'm not sort of directly part of such a company, the impression I have often is that big companies that have a certain agenda that is not actually well-being and people-orientated tend to, in my opinion, sort of have side projects like that that sort of look good for the public, which is, you know, like schools, or you see McDonald's. Take McDonald's, for example. Like, they're involved in a lot of, like, schooling projects, and then what you have is in schools McDonald's posters, and then you start to wonder, is it really just philanthropic? Is it really just to help kids, or is it just to, you know, like to just get, like, new potential consumers? I just wonder how, like I from maybe a moral point of view, I wonder what you think, like, what good, like, say, pharmaceutical companies or oil companies, or big pharma, big tobacco, all of those, how can it be good for us and the planet as a whole? What, like, their main drive, like, what they actually do, not the side project with the schools and all the greenwashing stuff, like their main goal, what they do every day, you know?
No,
how is it compatible?
Make no mistake, these guys are very clever at making money, and I've come across some amazing things which is, in my books, completely unethical. Like you mentioned, you know, there's a poster up there and it's all about education, but the poster's up there nonetheless. That's an influence. You know, that is how they operate. It's very clever. You get certain companies, like the company I work for, that has a high standard of ethics. Because they're Swiss, they've got a high standard of ethics. But money, obviously, is what the Swiss love, and the money is what they make. And yes, they are very creative, very innovative when it comes to actually pushing this kind of system onto the world. You know, and that's where I differ from the big companies, because they genuinely influence the way that the economy is run. And companies can literally do one thing, a small little thing, and it could change a lot of things in their direction. So make no mistake, there's a very strong core in a company that is looking after that, and that specifically. When I worked in these companies, I attacked that core. I don't mind them doing the core up to a point which I don't accept, and I've made it very clear that this is not a good practice. And suddenly, you know, these people are so focused on making money, if you come in from the side, because they're just people, you know, they're also people that have children and problems and gardens and want a nice lifestyle and all this pressure, it's not good for them either. And suddenly you come from the side, it's like you burst the balloon. And they have this insight, and I think, oh, I've never thought of that, because I'm running this narrow lane of trying to be clever to making money, you know? And that's how you influence people. I've had some feedback from some people years later, and I didn't realize that the way I do things have rippled to that kind of influence. You know, I was like really taken aback when we had a discussion with a group of friends, how they have had feedback from others about me and I had feedback from them, how when we take action, the reaction is like rippled across. I'm a very strong reaction taker. I mean, I just, the tougher the better for me. So, yes, they are going to go that route, but we can attack that core. There are people there who has to just open their minds. They also want what we want. Okay.
Have you thought? Oh, go on, Naresh.
Sorry, we're starting to kind of come to the end of this call, and I just wanted to take a moment to refocus us and refocus ourselves on this question about living our ethics, or living in an ethical way, and what that means to us. And particularly, I'm opening this to anybody who's hasn't said very much. Does anybody want to come in on that, or anybody like to say anything about that before we close? We have a few more minutes to go on exploring, and then I'm going to do a recap, or not a recap, I'm going to do a looking forward to the next module.
Well, I'll just say this.
No, hold on.
I'm
asking. Hold on.
Love it.
I'm really asking for people who haven't said a lot. But I mean, if they don't, then fine. Let's go. Adelaide wanted to say something as well, so I'm just trying to balance, create a bit of balance in this call, so that we have everybody has a chance to speak and to explore.
Naresh, I think Iona has asked if you can repeat the question.
So the question is, we're looking at this question about ethics and about living our values, and living an ethical or a lifestyle that is more in line with what you believe and the values that you hold the strongest. And for me, and that's what right livelihood is. It's to bring our actions into alignment with our values. So if there's anything anybody'd like to talk about in terms of, consuming, in terms of how you live, in terms of the sort of hidden things like relationships, and how you create peace and community with those around you, as well as some of the economic questions about how do you invest your money, or how do you create a way of living, a way of making money that is ethical, and at least in your, there's obviously that's a really big question, and as we've already heard express this what we believe and what we think is ethical is often a big question, and it's not a question that most of us ask ourselves very often, but it's a very important question.
I think Tim wanted to say something. Go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say, I think, this is a great conversation, and I've thought a bunch of different times that I could have kind of jumped in, but I think for me, it really comes down to starting small and voting with my own dollars and figuring out what I can do for myself, kind of the idea of right livelihood. And, so for me, that means that I, as a business owner, I support other businesses who I know share the same values that I have. And I own a B Corp. And so that I would like to buy from other B Corps or other businesses that I know are working with mission aligned organizations. I don't, occasionally I have like oil companies and fracking companies call me to do work and I turn them down. And for me, it's like those kind of small little decisions that you make on an everyday basis that kind of add up over time and gradually help you build out your own kind of network of right livelihood. But it all starts with kind of that first decision. That's all I was going to say.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So I think it's time. We're going to need to start wrapping up. So I'm just going to do a little looking ahead to Module 4, which is about local economies, revitalizing local economies and social innovation. I think this is another important piece of the puzzle, because if you look at just about anybody who's looking at repurposing our economic system, it almost always starts with doing something locally and creating strong local economies. A bit like Tim just said it. It's like we have the potential to influence those around us. We have the possibility of buying from other small companies around us who we know are doing good stuff and who we want to support and who will then hopefully support us. So the module looks at things about what does that mean in terms of money and keeping money flowing in local economies. Plugging the leaks is you'll see as an interesting way of looking at local economies. And then also to think about how to map the productive potential of our regions and start to think about how to productively as well as sustainably or regeneratively use those resources, use the people, the resources, the knowledge, the experience that's there to create something that is regenerative in the space around us. Some of the projects that are aiming to revitalize local economies, there's the Re-Economy Project, which is something that came out of the Transition Towns movement. A mate of mine, Fiona Ward, set it up, and it's produced a number of resources, and it's gone about looking at the Totnes economy and how we can start to create something that is more local. The Business Alliance for Local Living Economies is another one I think it's based in the States. The International Alliance for Localization is an international group that's looking at new radical visions of development and progress. The Solidarity Economy is another one. And you'll find that a lot of these innovations, a lot of the social innovation, business innovation, they share a lot of things in common. They share a lot of common values, a lot of common concepts, and they're coming to a lot of the same conclusions. And then there's this question about social entrepreneurs and social innovation, and so the module goes on to explore a little bit of that, identifying opportunities for social entrepreneurs. What are the prototypes? What are the things that have come out of eco-villages? Because a lot of that social innovation and social entrepreneurship has come out of the eco-village movement. People who live in eco-villages who have set up businesses, set up enterprises to cure some of the problems, to tackle some of the problems, but also there's a need to make money while they're doing it. And then lastly, there's a look at regenerative enterprise. So how you can go about optimizing both creating money, but also looking at the various different capitals, the different forms of currencies, and then how do we maximize all those things. So that's a brief overview of where we're going next time. Before we start, I just want to apologize a bit. This last 2 weeks have been very busy for me, so I'm a little bit behind in my marking. So if I haven't marked your reflection for module. I've done all module 1s. I haven't done. I've done a few of the module 2s, but I need to do that. And now we're moving on to module 4, so I'm sure there's going to be module 3 to do so. So anyway, I'm just a little bit behind, but I'll get to it next week. So let's do a little check out. A sentence, a few words. How are you feeling right now, or anything you'd like to say at the end of our time together? Who would like to start and then pass on to someone else?
I'll start. This is Tim. I just want to say thanks to all the great perspectives I heard here. Some really interesting conversations. I found it really interesting that it's a small group here, and 2 people are on the cusp of starting new kind of late career pivots or changes. I think that's really interesting, and I'm kind of on the cusp of that myself. So it was really great to hear that. So I will pass to my right where I'm at, and that's Victoria again. Hi, Victoria.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm quite busy myself in that last 2 weeks, changing jobs and everything. But hopefully after next week, I can focus more on that kind of eco-village design project type of thing. So I'm really looking forward to spend more time on investigating the aspects, and yeah, I get some practical experience, as well as just to know what do I actually need to work on such projects, and hopefully kind of get to a consultate status at one point of my life. I don't know when. Passing to Adele.
Thank you. Thank you for this session. I've really enjoyed talking to all of you. I'm really excited about module 4 as well. I think for me it might be particularly helpful because everything, like I don't know if that's the case for you guys. I think I should probably put something in a forum about it, but in France there is this big culture, this big shame around making money and money in general. And I've really struggled with that all my life, and the idea of setting up a business or doing something good for the community living might be the solution for me to make peace with it all. So I'll pass it on to Andre.
Yes, Adele, that is exactly what's going to happen to you. Going on your own is tough, but it's very, very fulfilling, and it really gets you on the ground. And that is what I cherish the most. Is the last 25 years of actually. I'm a loner. I like to work in between the system, or in the system and out. I've got situations where the guys phone me and say, "Why didn't you come in this week?" I said, "Well, I finished the job." They didn't notice that it wasn't in it for a month sometimes, because I finished the job. I want to move on to the next guys, So that's me. I like going in between, influencing people and get going. And that is what I see communities have to do, is they have to build some income. Short story, some Zimbabweans who fled to South Africa was given permission by a vet to make all kinds of little things with beads. And I picked up on them and I put them on eBay. And together we then asked the customers what they wanted. They made these bead little animals or whatever the customers wanted, and we sold it on eBay, and it was an incredible success. It was very simple. It was very easy. These guys were just living in the street, but they were doing good jobs, and we just did it right, and looking back at it, it was like phenomenal, to sit in a third world country, use technology, but to help that community, help me to basically run a little business, which actually turned out to be pretty good. And this is just selling little things that other people want. And, they make it out of recycled material. All right, so yes, I enjoy these sessions. I've been on a lot of these sessions as as you know, with all the before, and I really think we should be doing more of this. You know, this is what I enjoy. I'm listening to all these people all across the world, and it's like boom, you know, fantastic. Okay, enjoy the course.
And who do you pass on to?
Jaime.
Okay, I'm here. Thank you. Well, my first live session, I enjoyed so much. I got additional inspiration from all the discussions we have. I wonder why we do not have more people here. I believe we have 60 people doing this. Yeah, it would be good to see all of those guys here. And maybe 1 hour would not be enough for everybody to participate as we are doing. From all the things that we have discussed and in the chat, something comes to my mind, something that I have put in my reflection, I believe in Module 2, when we start to talk about currencies and banks and so on, and financial systems. And because it seems to me that we have bubbles in the world right now, you see. And it's a question of, you see, how wonderful is the kind of solutions, experiences, things that we can use a lot in terms of transforming the way the humanity is doing with our lives in this planet. And it seems that this kind of knowledge is not easy to spread all over. I know a lot of people, my friends, a lot of people that I've been working through all of my life, they don't know anything about that. Until 5 years ago, I did not hear about permaculture. So we have a great task ahead of us in terms of spreading this over, you see. Of course, with our change in behavior in our lives, as we see in this model, it's a great thing. But I think we have to think bigger. And organizations like Global Eco Village Network has a great role in all of this. But we need more. We need things to face the role that we have with IMF in the world, with World Trade, with, things like encompass and speak for part of the game, and helps to change the game and accelerating it and move fast. I know I'm just wondering things that come to my mind from these three models. Thank you.
Right.
And I think Iona can now also join us. Iona, you want to turn on your microphone?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
There might be a really, there's quite a big background noise, but I can talk for a minute or two. Hi, yes, no, it was so lovely to see you all and be a part of this, and also just to be a part of a network that's so connected and really can relate to one another. I'm currently in Chicago from London, but I think that the topics that we've been talking about obviously are all things that I'm constantly churning around in my head, trying to figure out, come up with ways in which we can really evolve, our societies and also, obviously, as I mentioned in the chat, a speedy sort of way, but to be done obviously well, because of the rate that obviously all of this is happening. It's more that I'm trying to skim through my ideas and concepts, which are quite creatively based and also scientific and ecological, and trying to see which ones would really impact the most at a fast speed, which is obviously a very difficult thing to try and come up with. But I always like a challenge, and I'm always, that's always, every day I'm constantly trying to churn out these ideas. But yeah, no, it's lovely to speak speak to you all and hear you all talk. I'm actually currently trying to buy some land and create my own self-sustainable environment to provide also food for the community and also create kind of social areas so that people can come and use the space for events or workshops, which can be, very much sustainably based. And so I really hope that any of you that have any ideas, or I spoke to Jamie about his project coming up that he's doing, and any way that I just love to be involved in these things. So wherever people need help, I just love to help in any way I can. I very much come from a creative background, so anyway that I can help out. It was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, Anna. Great that you can join us. So it's Gio. I think you're the only one left. Or anything?
No, yes, I really enjoyed this session as well. Thank you all for sharing your stories. I totally relate to all of them, and it makes me also realize personally how important it was for me to choose the path of an artist to make my living, because I always thought that way I could design my own life, and it's my design, nobody else can claim it. And fortunately, it's got me this far. So there are many ways to create social enterprises. Naresh, I notice it's getting dark where you are, so I think maybe we have come to an end. Should I stop the recording?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have come to an end. No.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
See you next time.
See you next
Bye-bye.
week. We have
See you next time.